Hey there, friends and enemies, Joper here again, and today I wanted to give my rankings of all the major characters in Cyberpunk 2077 after completing multiple endings, including the Phantom Liberty DLC. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with some of my rankings, so let me know in the comments down below which characters you rank higher or lower. I know everyone has their favorites, so I'm going to share mine here. Let me jump right into it because I have some thoughts. First off, we have Atom Smasher, and this is one of the most underutilized characters in the game, in my opinion, who is absolutely developed better and made to hate him more in the Edge Runners show on Netflix. So that kind of changes my opinion on him. I would rank him S tier if he had all that development in the game itself and not just in the show. But for me, because of the menacing presence that he has, I'm going to still rank him as A. He's the best boss fight in the game, in my personal opinion, and I just really enjoy his whole aesthetic. However, I do think it is pulled back a little bit by the fact that we don't hate him as much in the game, and it wasn't until Edge Runners came out that I really just wanted to wipe him out more than anything. Then we have Alex, who's in the Phantom Liberty DLC, and I think she's great. She is one of my favorite characters in the DLC. I really grow to enjoy her character arc overall, and I think she's a character that got a nice chance to shine despite not being in it for the entirety of the time, and I like her quite a bit. Then we have Alt Cunningham, who's an interesting case. I feel like she's really interesting and really cool. She's a tragic backstory, all that kind of good stuff. But I'm going to stick her in B tier, and my reason being, I don't know if we get a chance to get to know her as much as some of the other characters on this list. And that's why she's going to drop down a little bit. I think she is fascinating, but we don't do enough with her in order to have her up in A or S tier. Same thing with Bridget. Even my man Bridget is going to be in C tier. Her design is awesome. Her whole character is really cool, but she just doesn't play a big enough part for me to stay invested with her, and that's why she's going to drop down a little bit. Same thing with Claire Russell. I actually like her. I think her storyline is fairly interesting, but I'm going to put her even further in D tier because we just don't get enough of her to really get that same connection as we do with a lot of other characters. And then we have Delamine, who I don't really care for. I know he has his own storyline, but for me, it's just generic AI stuff. I'm not as big a fan. Dexter Deshawn is a B tier character, only around in the beginning, but I do find him to be a fascinating rival, essentially, that we have to deal with for a bit. Kind of, you're working with him in the beginning, but you know that it's going to go sideways at some point right from the jump, and that's why he's going to be ranked where he is. So I find him to be very, 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 very interesting overall. Then we have Elizabeth Peralez. I find that storyline to be kind of subpar, so I'm going to put that down in D tier. It's a side quest to do. You interact with her a bit, but again, I'm not really as interested in her as I am a lot of other characters in the game. Then we have Evelyn Parker, who I do find interesting, and again, tragedy strikes with her quite a bit, so that's why I'm going to put her in B tier. She sets off a whole chain of events that are very, very important, and I just like her whole vibe that she has. She's very confident, but then once you find out more about her down the line, it is an interesting interaction with her overall. Then we've got Goro. Goro is one of the best characters in this game. He's one that initially you don't want to like, but then as you get to know his motivations, his loyalty and stuff, I'm going to put him up at A tier as well. I think he is one of the most intriguing characters in the game just because you have ways to almost redeem him, and you see at the very end through a couple of the different endings just how the journey has affected him as well. So there is that character growth also, and I just like Goro as well overall as a character. Then we're gonna have Hanako Arasaka. I'm going to put her in C tier. I think she's fascinating, but we really only deal with her at the end of the game, so there's really not a lot there to really vibe off of, and that's why I'm going to drop her a little bit lower. I do think she's one of the characters who, given her own game, like if she could play a prominent figure in the sequel, would be very interesting to see, or even with another show like Edge Runners could be fascinating. Jackie Wells. He influences the entire game for me, whether you like him or hate him. I know there are some conflicting opinions on whether he is as lovable as he seems to be initially, but I think his importance to the story is absolutely necessary, and he kind of sticks with you the entirety of the game as you're thinking of the choices that you're going to make. Next up, we have Jefferson Perez, and just like the wife, I just don't find that storyline to be super interesting or long enough or important enough to remain relevant. You're not going to see him if you don't want to do those side quests, so that's why I'm putting him down there as well. Next up, we have Johnny Silverhand. Keanu Reeves does such an excellent job as Johnny Silverhand overall, and even with the DLC, knowing he came back for some additional stuff after the base game was already launched, he essentially sold this game in the beginning, and his performance was fantastic. I love Johnny Silverhand, and I think he's one of the best characters in video game history overall. Then we have Joshua Stevenson. This is a tragic story that I very much enjoy this side quest, and I really found it to be fascinating. It's one that is missable. You don't have to do it, but I would say is one that I would recommend everybody check out just because of the interesting dynamics you have with his whole storyline. I think he is a fascinating character, even though he doesn't stick around all that long. Then we have Judy. She's my favorite romanceable character. She's one of my favorite characters in the game, especially as a companion character, essentially. You don't have characters join your party or anything, but as a character who chimes in with voice lines, she gives you phone calls throughout as you get to know her and leaves you texts and all that kind of stuff. She is one that I say everybody should try to get to know. Do her quests, absolutely. If you can, she is one of the best characters in the game, and I highly recommend talking to her as much as possible. Then we have Kerry Eurodyne. He's going to be a solid A tier character for me. He's another one. You learn about everything that he's gone through since the death of Johnny Silverhand and all of his character growth. You go through various quests with him. He can be a little bit annoying. That's why he's not going to be up at A tier for me. But I think overall, he is a very, very good character, and I really enjoyed going through his quest lines and seeing the rise and fall of their band, and then reuniting with the band was one of the best parts of the game in my personal opinion. Next up, we have Kurt. Kurt Hansen is menacing throughout. If his boss fight was a little harder, if his boss fight had a little more layers to it, I would probably put him at S tier. Overall, I think he was an A tier villain. He's very much a more impactful character than Atom Smasher, but fighting him wasn't as impactful as it was with Atom Smasher. That's why I would have them on the same level. They affect the game in different ways, even though they're the two best villains in the game, in my personal opinion. I think Yorinobu is there. He is an overarching villain. You see him do some menacing stuff in the beginning, but overall, Kurt is the driving force of the Phantom Liberty DLC. He's ever present in that city as a leader of Dogtown, and then you also see Atom Smasher is just a terrifying villain who has overwhelming power. Misty, I'm actually going to put her into S tier as well. I think some of the things that we see at the end of not only the Phantom Liberty DLC, but if you got that new ending from Phantom Liberty, shows a growth that was awesome. I thought that was very, very well done, and she's a character that I loved seeing the evolution of. You see the loss of Jackie, you get to know her, especially if you do some of the side things for her directly, and overall I think she's one of the characters that is easy to like, and you're actually rooting for her. Her and Judy and maybe Pan Am are some of the few characters in the game that you are really rooting for throughout, and that's why I'm putting her up at S tier, because I do want her to win as much as possible. You have Mr. Hands. He's great. I thought he was an A tier character, especially in Phantom Liberty. He was really, really good as your fixer, as your main point of contact as you get later into Phantom Liberty, and I thought he was really, really solid. So overall, I'm a fan of Mr. Hands. However, I don't think he belongs up in the top tier with the more impactful characters overall, because of some of he just wasn't there as much throughout the game, or even in the DLC, he doesn't show up for quite some time. Padre, He's fine, C tier. I don't think he stands out in any way as far as a long-lasting character. He doesn't play an important enough role into your story, so that's why he's going to drop down quite a bit. Then we have Panam. She is fantastic. She was my first romanced character in the entirety of the game. She was the first character that I really enjoyed her side quests and really liked her interactions with her clan and them traveling around and all that kind of good stuff. And so I felt like Panam was one of my favorites from the jump. I will say I enjoyed going down the route with Judy more than Panam's a little bit, just because of some of the emotional connection there. But overall, Panam is fantastic, and I really, really enjoyed her whole vibe. So that's why I'm going to rank her up at S tier as well. I know I have a lot in S tier, but I love a lot of the characters in this game, more so than most other games that I've played. Then we have Placide. He is fine. He is, again, C tier. I don't know if he's around long enough to really make enough of an impact in the game, so that's why I'm going to drop him down a little bit for that. But he is a very interesting character, and I do like his whole arc there, but for me, he's not as important as a lot of other characters. Now we're getting to some more of the good stuff. River Ward, and he's a very good character. I'm going to put him at A tier. I didn't enjoy his storyline as much as I did Judy or Panam, or even maybe Rogue for that matter, but I did find his to be one of the best in the game. All of the characters that you're able to romance and get to know through these long-lasting storylines, from Johnny to Judy to Panam, River, Rogue, all of them really grow on you over time, and even if they kind of can be grating in the initial moments of meeting them, overall they are fantastic. And it's hard putting him here in A tier. I'd almost put him at S minus as like the number one A tier character, because I would put him on the verge of being S tier. There's just other characters that I just enjoyed overall a bit more, and that's why I'm going to drop him down. Same thing with Rogue. Rogue is right there as well. I don't like her storyline as much as I did Panam's or Judy's, but as far as her tragedy, her initial demeanor that you see, and everything that you learn about her over the course of the game, I think she's awesome, and I think she's a character who you can really see that she's changed since that initial moment of meeting her with Johnny Silverhand. So I find her to be fantastic. Now we have President Myers, who initially I was a fan of. I thought she was very cool character. I loved interacting with her, and then she kind of faded into the background of the Phantom Liberty DLC, so I'm going to put her in B tier. She's kind of an a-hole. I do not think that she is a character that is supposed to be very likable, even though you want to at first, but overall I think her storyline is one that is the only qualm I have with Phantom Liberty, really, is I feel like that could have been explored a bit more, especially after the initial meetings. Once you kind of set up your base and you save her life, there's really not a lot there holding you to her, so that's why she drops down. In my opinion, I feel like she is a good character, but just there were some missed opportunities there, especially with how she interacts with the rest of the world and what she owes you after saving her, and really seeing that turnaround to be the arrogant president that she actually is, despite you saving her life. So next up, we're going to have Sabaru Arasaka. He's going to be here in B tier. I think he bookends the game and is prevalent in the beginning and the end, but throughout the majority of the game, you don't really interact with him enough. I do think that there are reasons to find him to be the main bad guy of the entire game, especially as you learn that he could essentially have survived what had happened, and that's the whole reason behind the Johnny Silverhand program. But I do think that there is not enough interaction with him in order to make him more memorable than he is. So that's why I'm going to drop him down a little bit there. Then we have Saul. I like Saul a lot. He's going to be B tier. He's vital to Panam's story. He's a character that I very much enjoy interacting with overall. I think he is pretty fascinating as a character, as a leader. But again, that story is based around Panam, so I'm not really going to boost him any higher because he is definitely a side character in that whole story. And so that's why he's going to drop down just a little bit. Now we get to one of my favorite characters, and obviously Idris Elba does a fantastic job with him as well. Solomon Reed, I'm going to put up at S tier. Same thing with Songbird. These two are obviously interlinked. You know there's going to be some interesting back and forth with them. You know that the choices that you have to make between them is going to be very impactful, and seeing how that all plays out was awesome. I thought both of them did a phenomenal job. They are 1A and 1B of the Phantom Liberty story. I would say Solomon Reed is more interesting to me, seeing his tragedy. I thought he was going to be more of a villain, to be honest. Once I started playing through the game, that was my initial prediction. But then as it went through and you kind of saw everything that he had done, everything he had been through, him sticking to his guns, he was very much different from Johnny Silverhand, but almost two sides of the same coin. And I really liked watching how they had such a juxtaposition overall, where Songbird was, again, someone who you felt bad for by the end. It was difficult choices to make with what you wanted to do with her, especially as it pertains to your own life in the game. And so that's why I think she is very vital to Phantom Liberty as a whole, and I found her to be awesome. Now we have T-Bug. Obviously, did not like her over the course of time, but really she only impacts the beginning of the game, and so that's why I'm going to drop her down a little bit. I think she could have been used a little bit more. There could have been more of a revenge tale maybe, or something like that involved with T-Bug, but for me, she's going to drop down a little bit, because while she's memorable in the beginning, obviously your memory of her fades as the game goes on. Now we have Victor. He is S tier. He is obviously one of the most important characters, especially if you go through some of the different endings and you see your interactions with him. Overall, he is one of the best characters. He's another one, along with Panam and Judy and Misty, who you're definitely rooting for by the end, and you hope that only good things happen to him. So that's why he's going to be ranked all the way up there. I really enjoy him overall, and I think he's a fantastic character. Then we have Wakako. She is fine. I'll put her as C as well. She is an okay character, nothing special in my opinion. You learn a bit about her, but just like with Padre, I don't think there's enough there to really make her compete on the list of S or A tier or even B tier overall for me. And then you have Yorinobu or Arasaka, who I think is, again, he is fine, just like his dad. I think is the villain that Kurt Hansen is the villain that Yorinobu wants to be, as far as the menacing presence, the overarching enemy that you want to be dealing with, but ultimately isn't there. He is not as impactful as Kurt Hansen overall, and the story of the characters that you deal with from moment to moment are more important to the overall tale, and the race against time is more of the villain than Yorinobu, in my personal opinion. He is there. You see him do some awesome stuff in the beginning of the game, and then you don't really meet him again until the end, and that's why he's going to be a bit down the list at B tier. Anyway, let me know what you guys' thoughts are. Where would you rank all these different characters? Did I get this list right, wrong, totally messed up, whatever the case may be? If you want to see more Cyberpunk from me in the future, definitely like the video, subscribe to the channel. My name is JoPa. I hope you have a good one. I'll catch you all later.